This is the kind of case that stays with you long after the story ends. Because it wasn't a crime of impulse. It wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It was a calculated execution, planned, prepared, and carried out against a family who trusted the very man who destroyed them. This is the haunting story of the Han family and the betrayal that ended their lives. Welcome back to Chilling Fireside Stories, where I tell true crime stories with care and respect. If you haven't already, please subscribe. It truly helps me continue bringing these important stories to you. Now, settle in and let's begin. Henry Han was born on October 6, 1958, in Beijing, China, into a family where healing was a tradition passed down through generations. His grandfather practiced herbal medicine, his mother was a gynecologist, and his father a dermatologist. Surrounded by physicians, Henry grew up immersed in the language of care and cure. Medicine wasn't just a career path for him, it was his inheritance, woven into his very identity. From the moment he arrived in America, he carried that legacy forward, blending Eastern wisdom with Western science. His Santa Barbara Herb Clinic became a sanctuary, a place where patients travel from across the country to find peace, hope, and healing. Henry was more than a doctor, he was a healer. His calm conviction was contagious, and his humility unforgettable. Friends remembered him arriving in flip-flops, carrying food, never with airs, and colleagues described him as curious, open-minded, and passionate. Patients credited him with saving their lives, guiding them through their darkest battles. And in 2009, Henry met Jenny Yu, and soon after they got married. For those who knew him, it was clear Henry was happier than ever. Jenny was warm, devoted, and lovely, and together they built a life that seemed complete. When their daughter, Emily, was born, Henry was overjoyed. He was a proud father, often seen with his family by his side. At the clinic, Jenny quickly became his right hand, trusted completely to help run the practice. In the spring of 2016, the Hans were preparing for Emily's 6th birthday. Presents were wrapped, plans were made. But just 3 days before the celebration, tragedy struck. On the morning of March 23, 2016, Henry missed a 10 a.m. meeting with his investment group. For Henry, punctuality was second nature, and if he was even 2 minutes late, he would call. So when his phone went straight to voicemail, alarm bells rang. By midday, his business partners tried to reassure themselves, imagining the family had taken Emily to Disneyland ahead of her upcoming birthday. But beneath those hopeful explanations, a quiet fear lingered, and deep down, everyone sensed that something was terribly wrong. That's when Henry's longtime friend, Don Goldberg, made the decision to go to the Han home. He had known Henry for more than 25 years, considered him family, and when Henry missed a meeting, Don's concern turned into action. He wanted to check on Henry and his family. From the outside, everything looked normal. The front door was closed but unlocked, and both family cars sat in the garage. Don called 911 and asked for welfare check, and deputies arrived at around 5:30 p.m. They made entry into the Han home, calling out for anyone inside. There was no response. As they began searching for signs of foul play, their attention turned to the garage. They opened the garage door, and as they walked around behind the first car, they saw what looked like 3 bodies, wrapped in plastic and duct tape. Within minutes, the horrifying truth sank in. Henry, Jenny, and little Emily were gone. Investigators quickly began to piece together what had happened inside the Han home. The family had been shot as they slept upstairs. Henry in the couple's bedroom, Jenny and little Emily together across the hall. From the scene, it looked as though Jenny had been reading her daughter a bedtime story, staying by her side until she drifted off. The cruelty of the act stunned even the most seasoned detectives. The killer had tried to cover his tracks. The sharp smell of bleach hung in the air, and bottles were scattered around the house. Stains marked the carpet, and bloody items had been stuffed into the washing machine. Bedding stripped from the beds was piled in the laundry room, and the machine's alarm beeping from an unbalanced load. The murders left Santa Barbara shattered. Patients who had relied on Henry's healing touch struggled to comprehend the loss. For decades, Henry Han gave people hope. He blended Eastern traditions with Western medicine, guiding patients through their darkest battles. Cancer survivors spoke of how he saved their lives. Mothers remembered the strength he gave them to keep going. His calm conviction touched everyone who came through his doors, and now, the man who had given so much to others was gone, along with his wife and daughter. Investigators quickly turned to the next phase of their work, uncovering who had done this, how and why. Investigators combed through the Han home, uncovering a trail of evidence that revealed both brutality and carelessness. In the laundry room, they discovered a heap of bloody sheets and pillows. Hidden among them were bullet fragments and a .22 caliber round. 3 shell casings were found wrapped within Jenny's body, and another lodged between the baseboard and Emily's bed. 1 bullet had passed clean through, a perfect match for comparison against the murder weapon. As detectives pieced the crime together, they uncovered a crucial clue. Beside Henry's bed sat a paper bag containing a freshly signed business contract. Dated the very last day Henry was seen alive, it carried 2 names, Dr. Henry Hahn and Pierre Hobsch. Friends knew Pierre as one of Henry's associates. To some, he appeared harmless, even mild-mannered. But others, like the Palombos, had always felt uneasy around him. Something about Pierre never sat right, and now suspicion was beginning to take shape. Henry's curiosity had recently drawn him into groundbreaking work with CBD, exploring its potential to ease pain and inflammation. To pursue these ideas, he partnered with 25-year-old Pierre Hobsch. Pierre introduced himself as a scientist with laboratory experience, speaking in technical jargon that sounded convincing, but in truth, he had no degree, no formal training, and little credibility beyond his words. The Palombos remembered troubling results from his experiments, toxic materials appearing where none should have been. When questioned, Pierre brushed it off casually, saying he was just learning more about the molecules. To them, he seemed less like a scientist and more like a salesman, polished on the surface, but hollow underneath. Their suspicions only grew when unusual charges began showing up on Henry's accounts, raising unsettling questions about Pierre's real intentions. As Henry's business expanded, troubling irregularities began to surface in his finances. His financial manager flagged charges that didn't belong to the clinic. They weren't business expenses at all, they were payments for escort services. When Henry uncovered the truth, his reaction was swift and furious. "Pierre's out," he told them. For Henry, that was the final straw. But in the weeks leading up to the murders, Henry unexpectedly brought Pierre back into conversation. He spoke of learning more about Pierre's difficult childhood, of the struggles he claimed to have overcome, and Henry wanted to give him a second chance. But his business partners, and even Jenny, remained unconvinced. To them, Pierre's intentions never seemed genuine, and the unease around him only grew stronger. Just 4 days before the murders, Jenny confided in a friend that she didn't trust Pierre, wondering if they should give him another chance. But Henry's trusting nature left him exposed. Pierre had told him he was gravely ill with late-stage cancer, and Henry, ever compassionate, wanted to help. It was a lie, a manipulation designed to exploit his kindness. Investigators later learned Pierre had even stayed overnight at the Han home before the murders, and that flimsy contract found in the master bedroom, signed on Henry's final day alive, was meant to mark a new partnership. To prosecutors, it was nothing more than a sham, amateurish, unnotarized, and illegitimate. Detectives uncovered more damning evidence. In the kitchen trash, they found packaging for the same plastic wrap that had been used to bind all 3 members of the Han family. Beside it lay discarded packaging for 3M duct tape, identical to the tape wrapped around their bodies. The wrap was traced back to Home Depot, and within hours, security footage revealed a man who matched Pierre Hobsch's DMV photo. There he was, caught on camera in Oceanside, California, walking out of the store with 3 massive rolls of plastic and duct tape in his arms. And that was it, the moment everything clicked. Within hours of the crime scene being discovered, Pierre Hobsch had become the prime person of interest. Detectives realized that both Jenny's and Henry's phones were missing. They suspected that by tracing the digital data from those devices, they might uncover vital clues, and their hunch was right. Data from the Hans' missing cell phones revealed they were moving south, farther and farther from Santa Barbara. Then, inexplicably, Henry's phone went dark, but Jenny's remained active, continuing its journey south. Each ping left behind a digital footprint, guiding investigators step by step toward Oceanside. It was chilling. A dead woman's phone was leading them straight to her killer. Only one day after the Hahn family was found murdered, a manhunt was launched in Oceanside, California, nearly 200 miles from the crime scene. Local police joined forces with investigators from Santa Barbara, coordinating a high-stakes operation. Special enforcement units were mobilized, prepared to intercept the suspect if an opportunity presented itself. The search for Pierre Hobsch had become a critical mission, and the police knew the window to capture him could close at any moment. Meanwhile, undercover detectives maintained surveillance on the residence, which Pierre Hobsch shared with his father, relaying constant updates to every unit involved in the operation. Suddenly, Pierre's father left the residence. The surveillance team followed as he drove to a Walmart parking lot, where cameras captured him meeting with Pierre. First came the father's sedan, then Pierre's Lexus pulling in close behind. They spoke briefly before the trunk opened, and 2 large duffel bags were moved into Pierre's car. Moments later, both vehicles drove off. It was just after midnight. Pierre had only a short lead on the officers trailing him when he pulled into an Arco gas station. What he didn't know was that police surveillance had been tracking his movements all along, every mile, every stop. Units were already in position nearby, waiting for the right moment. Then, in a flash, an unmarked car tore through the intersection. Officers jumped out, weapons drawn, and forced Pierre to the ground. In seconds, the manhunt reached its dramatic end. And now, the investigators had the Hahn family's alleged killer in custody. Pierre Hobsch waived his Miranda rights and began to talk. What followed felt nothing like a routine police interview. Instead, his words unfolded like conspiracy tales. He claimed his life was in danger. He insisted shadowy forces were targeting him because of a scientific marvel he had invented. Hobsch told detectives that earlier in the week, he had gone to Dr. Hahn's home to install one of his so-called perpetual energy devices, and that the plastic wrap and duct tape he was seen buying were simply for that purpose. Pierre Hobsch tried to spin a story that detectives could hardly believe. He claimed he had left Santa Barbara the afternoon before the murders, after signing that flimsy contract with Henry. He insisted he would never harm the family, instead pointing to shadowy figures who, he said, had killed the Hahns and framed him. But then right there, detectives received an unexpected call. The caller was T.J. DeRita, a marijuana grower who said Dr. Hahn had approached him about CBD-rich strains. TJ had also met Pierre. He recalled how Dr. Hahn once described Pierre as a prodigy street chemist, someone experimenting with ideas ahead of his time. TJ DeRita described Pierre as the awkward kid desperate to fit in. Despite that, the two formed a friendship, with TJ often stepping in like someone protecting an outcast in high school, and Pierre in turn placed complete trust in TJ, a trust that would later prove critical. TJ DeRita revealed to detectives that on the morning of the murders, Pierre had texted him at 9:39 a.m. asking for help moving something. He told TJ he was in Santa Barbara and needed to talk face-to-face. When Pierre arrived at TJ's house in Thousand Oaks, the first words out of his mouth were chilling. "Just so you know, I'm a monster." He confessed outright. He had killed Dr. Henry, Jenny, and little Emily, and now he needed help. TJ told investigators that Pierre went into disturbing detail, describing how he had tried to fit the bodies into his car but couldn't because Henry was too heavy. He explained how the killings were carried out, how the victims were wrapped, and even admitted to having the doctor's phone. These were details prosecutors later said only the killer could have known. Pierre also revealed his motive, money. Pierre claimed he planned to siphon $20 million from Henry's accounts after eliminating the family. At first, TJ wasn't sure if this was just another one of Pierre's wild, far-fetched stories. He decided to play along, hoping to buy time and confirm whether Pierre was telling the truth. "Let me work on it, and I'll call you later," he told him, trying to get Pierre out of his house. Once Pierre left, TJ tried desperately to reach Henry and anyone else who might know what was happening, but there was no answer. Meanwhile, Pierre kept sending messages. By late afternoon, frustrated that TJ hadn't helped, Pierre proposed a sudden trip to Las Vegas. To TJ, the offer felt sinister and suspected Pierre wanted to lure him into a trap, to kill him, and make it look like he was involved, turning him into the fall guy. TJ refused, inventing an excuse to stay away. At 7:35 that evening, Pierre sent one final text. "Yep, I'm screwed. They just found everything. My life's over. only if I got to it all sooner. By then, prosecutors say he was going to return to the Han home with a large truck, intending to move the bodies. But law enforcement had already beaten him to the scene. Pierre Hobsch was arrested near Oceanside at a crucial point in the investigation. When officers stopped him, they immediately spotted a 9mm handgun lying in plain view on the driver's side floorboard. Beside it were his passport and 2 duffel bags packed with clothes and supplies, as if he had prepared for months on the run. His father, who had handed over those bags only minutes earlier, was also detained and questioned. But investigators found no evidence tying him to the murders, and he was released later that morning. The following day, detectives conducted a closer search of Pierre's car. What they uncovered was chilling: Henry's wallet, passport, credit card, and social security number. The victim's phones and tablet were also there, wrapped in aluminum foil in a crude attempt to block tracking signals. Hidden beneath the spare tire compartment lay the murder weapon itself, complete with suppressor, silencer, and ammunition. Autopsies performed a week later confirmed the horror. Henry and Jenny had each been shot 3 times. Emily, just days away from her 6th birthday, had been shot 8 times. 14 bullets in total, all matching the ammunition recovered at the crime scene. Pierre Hobsch was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, making him eligible for the death penalty. The defense argued that their client was desperate to be vindicated. The priority was simple: to spare him from the death penalty, and at the last moment, prosecutors agreed to take execution off the table in exchange for a bench trial, meaning a judge, not a jury, would decide his fate. On October 25, 2021, more than 5.5 years after the murders, the trial began. Prosecutors laid out their theory. Pierre Hobsch had plotted the murders of the Han family for financial gain. They painted him as a career con man, a man who flaunted intelligence and fabricated wealth. He sent screenshots of supposed Chase bank accounts showing balances ranging from $3 million to nearly $940 million, duping others into believing he was a jet-setting billionaire. In reality, it was all smoke and mirrors, a facade that masked greed, manipulation, and ultimately murder. Pierre Hobsch had long claimed he was on the verge of a breakthrough, a perpetual energy machine that would change the world. He boasted of big offers and painted himself as a visionary, an Elon Musk-like figure. Years earlier, he had even convinced wealthy investors to fund his invention, arriving in Tempe, Arizona with a flashy red Ferrari and a penthouse apartment. But the illusion didn't last. The machine never worked, the money dried up, and by the time of the murders, Pierre had less than $500 to his name. Prosecutors presented a meticulous timeline of his movements. As early as March 17th, 6 days before the murders, Pierre was searching online for ways to impersonate Dr. Han at his bank. Even looking up Asian disguises and real flesh masks as if he were living in a Mission Impossible fantasy. Security footage placed him at an Arizona gun store just 4 days before the killings, purchasing ammunition and 2 firearms, including a .22 pistol with a threaded barrel designed for a silencer. On March 20th, he was back in Oceanside, buying supplies before driving north to the Han home under the guise of installing his energy machine. Instead, prosecutors said, he secretly bugged Henry's computer with a spyware program called a keylogger, recording every keystroke and click. The chilling evidence showed that while staying at the Han residence, Pierre's laptop searches included: what part of the skull is more penetrable, and what ammunition would be better. He was a guest in Henry's home, eating their food, sleeping under their roof, all while planning an execution-style murder. On March 22nd, Pierre left the house, but prosecutors allege he returned at 4 a.m. the next morning to carry out the killings. Later that day, he frantically tried to siphon money from Henry's accounts, using stolen personal information, fake emails, and multiple phones. But a Chase fraud alert flagged an attempted $72,000 transfer. He even rented a large truck, apparently intending to move the bodies. But his plan unraveled. The Palombos, expecting Henry at a meeting that morning, raised alarms when he didn't show. Pierre thought he had a full day to clean up his mess before anyone noticed, but he was wrong. As investigators closed in, Pierre's guilty conscience betrayed him. He even reached out to an online psychic named Count Marco, asking for guidance. The psychic's reply was blunt. "Well, what did you do, Pierre?" Pierre never answered. In court, however, he couldn't stop talking. Despite the overwhelming evidence, he clung to his fantastical stories. On November 24th, 2021, Judge Brian Hill delivered the verdict. None of Pierre's family members attended. The ruling was clear, guilty on all counts. The judge stated his decision was beyond a shadow of a doubt. Pierre Hobsch was guilty. There was no hesitation, no room for question. The evidence was overwhelming and the verdict final. On April 15th, 2022, Pierre Hobsch was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. For the community, for the friends and patients who had loved Henry, Jenny, and Emily, it was a measure of justice. But for those still mourning, it could never be enough. What Pierre Hobsch stole can never be returned. Birthdays that will never be celebrated, laughter that will never echo through their home, the everyday joys of family life erased in an instant. For those left behind, the pain is endless, a wound that refuses to heal. Nearly a decade later, the grief is still raw. Even thinking of them is unbearable. Henry Hahn devoted his life to healing others. He believed in ancient wisdom, holistic medicine, and helping people find balance. He even co-authored a book titled Ancient Herbs, Modern Medicine, with Dr. Glenn Miller, blending traditional remedies with contemporary science. But in the end, he fell victim not to illness but to greed, betrayal, and a calculated plan. Jenny and Emily were so innocent. A loving family was shattered. And Pierre Hobsch, once a business partner, was revealed to be the monster who betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. Thank you for watching Chilling Fireside Stories. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's remember Henry, Jenny, and little Emily, not for their tragic end, but for the lives they lived and the love they shared. And as always, until my next video, stay safe and look after your loved ones.